All right, great. It's Amanda Williams here, doing my postdoc at ETH Zurich together with Rodney Irwin from the WBCSD. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly, Rodney?
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Rodney Irwin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, based in Geneva, Switzerland.
Yeah, great, thanks. Today we will be recording a conversation that is aimed at helping early career researchers to combine their research with practical impacts in collaborating with practitioners. Yeah, so our first question is, what led to the project and what were the important catalysts of getting the project off the ground? So I think on my side, on the research side, it's important to know that the project was a part of a larger project that was funded by the European Commission, and it was a Marie Curie early training network. So there was actually a lot of work done by the scientific director of the network, Nigel Room, to get this funded and off the ground. He had to be really persistent and sent in the application a couple times actually to get it accepted. But he really had a vision about bringing together young researchers around the common topic of sustainable innovation and pairing them together with industry partners. So actually this idea of collaboration with practitioners was embedded into the research project right from the very start. And then I think another really important factor was my former PhD supervisor, Gail Whiteman. She did a lot of work to actually bring the WBCSD on board. She had already known Peter Bakker, WBCSD CEO, and had to convince him to sign on as a formal project partner on this. And then on my end, it still actually took a lot of effort, even though there was already funding and then there was already an agreement with WBCSD to kind of keep pushing on the administrative formalities. So it actually took about a year to finally settle in at Rodney's team at WBCSD. There were some issues with the work permit that we had to be persistent on and kind of find ways to work around that. So I would say there were a lot of different factors that went into it. It definitely was not easy, and Rodney's support was crucial as well. So I want to turn it over to him now and see what he has to say about what led to this project and how he helped to get it off the ground.
Thanks, Amanda. I came to academia quite late in my career. I obviously did a bachelor's degree and then trained as a professional accountant and worked for almost 20 years, but in progressive finance roles in multinational companies. But I also caught the bug of learning and research myself in about 12, 13 years into my career, when I went back and did a master's degree by research and then went on to do a Doctor of Business Administration degree, which involved a significant amount of applied research as well. This introduction myself to academia was really frustrating because as a business practitioner and as a part-time academic studying for a doctorate at the same time, I became immensely frustrated by the number of conferences I attended where research was being presented that was not really needed, that was perhaps out of date already, and most shockingly of all is that you would get to the end of someone's presentation and they would say the limitations of this research are that we've not talked to anybody or that we've not been able to access a company. It's based on perception of public available information. And that just used to really make me quite frustrated, because I do believe in the value of good research, but research for me needs to be applied. It needs to be ready for practitioners to apply it. And I found that in academia, the obsession with peer-reviewed journals and the way in which academics appraise themselves and are evaluated is not aligned with what we need. In sustainability, the challenges that we face are immense, but the speed with which we need to address them is even a bigger challenge. And so we don't have 5 years to wait for something to be published. And so when this opportunity arose to put my own frustrations to play, if you like, and support a PhD researcher with access to companies, access to an organization that is passionate and driving change, then it was a no-brainer for me. So for me, it was first of all, a great new way of training researchers. And more importantly, it was an opportunity for us to also benefit from a talented researcher in-house. And so it made perfect sense to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting because I was still really early in my academic career, so I didn't get yet to experience all those frustrations that you had. I was kind of put right into it.
It's a bit like language training. If you teach them young, you think, well, okay, they'll be like this for the rest of their career. So that was also another benefit, is that we're getting a young researcher, and hopefully the experience that we have been able to work with you on will be one that you can then carry throughout your career. I think theory is great, but applied research is really where sustainability needs to be focused.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so valuable for me to have that very early on in my career. All right. So our next question is, what are some ways academics could improve how they approach practitioners with project ideas? I think from my perspective, researchers kind of need to change the way that they think about the relationship with practice-oriented partners. I think kind of the perception is to just go in and take data and just get whatever researchers need and then get out. But you know, my time at WBCSD, the relationship was really much different. You know, actually spending a year there working with your team, working on some of the WBCSD projects. So it was a much closer relationship, and you know that took time that I not necessarily wasn't rewarded for, other than you know having great access to data, to ethnographic data. So I think we need to find ways to sort of incentivize researchers spending more time in the field, spending more time collaborating with practitioners, and sort of change this mentality that it's not all about taking, but thinking about how we can give back as well. I don't know, what are your thoughts, Rodney? I know WBCSD gets approached all the time with research projects, so I think you probably have a lot of ideas about what are the attractive projects and what could make them more attractive.
I think we do. We obviously get a lot of people asking if they can use us to access companies. First of all, research that is not involving companies but is expected to drive behavior in companies is really a challenge. As I said already, I believe passionately in the importance of applied research. And during Amanda's time with the WBCSD, I organized a conference which brought together academics and business practitioners to actually discuss the expectation gap, or the practitioner academic gap that exists today, because it does exist today. So businesses had to submit a paper, an abstract. So they had to meet the academic, if you like, halfway there with some ideas they had. But likewise, academics had to, you know, be able to present what their ambitions are, their ideas are, in business-focused language. Because one part of this gap that we have today is that academic writing is not accessible to the practitioner. But you know, this is again back to the frustrations that I've experienced, is that if you are being rewarded for peer-reviewed publications that have a certain style and linguistic capability, then great. But I personally believe that academics should also be able to be appraised on how much their research is applied by business, how much of it has actually been implemented, what changes have happened as a result of this new knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so as a member of the steering committee of the Environmental Management Accounting Network, EMAN, I organized this conference. There was about, I think, 80 participants. And it was about making both groups meet each other with language that was accessible. And instead of listening through a presentation, we had no presentations. It was elevator pitches, and the feedback was exceptionally strong. And that's resulted in a book chapter, which together with Amanda and two others that will be published shortly. So for me, it's exceptionally important that that researchers particularly in the field of sustainability, are talking to practitioners, and that those practitioners are an integral part of the research process, but also in terms of the research publication. The research, in my view, should not just be leading to a peer-reviewed journal, but perhaps should also be in a more accessible, business-orientated publication. And we've recently done some work with the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, where we've co-created a business-focused publication, and the academic will then take it into a peer-reviewed journal. We did the same with Yale on materiality in the food sector, which resulted in a business-accessible publication. And likewise, the academic then was able to take it. But the very fact that you have to do that stinks. And there is therefore an issue in academia that needs to be addressed. Because if you're issuing something to the business community that you then have to change to meet your peers, really, why? And as a business practitioner, I'm still asking academics why they need that. Why is that important? I understand the importance of peer review. I understand the importance of journal publications. But if it's taking longer to do that, and if it's not then going to be accessible to the practitioners, then I question whether it's really valuable.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, though, that you're able to do it the other way around, because normally as researchers, we publish the academic article first, and then we think about, okay, can we somehow turn this also into a practitioner-oriented article? But by then we're probably so tired of the paper because it's been under review for 3 years, we don't even want to think about it.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, you know, you get this pushback as sometimes as well. We say, oh, it has to be original, so we can't publish it first. I'm like, really? We're commissioning this research. So find a way. And of course, you can find a way. If you're incentivized in a certain way, then you will go down that road. But if you've also got a client who's saying, this is what we need and this is the priority, then you have to service the needs of that client. And I think we're at a point in time where, you know, academia needs to reflect as well on what is its purpose, and is it about creating knowledge, or is it about driving change? And I think both are not you know, separate. They should be integrated, and success shouldn't just be about the quality of the journal and how many you publish, but it should also be how many businesses have changed behavior as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that conversation is starting to pick up. You know, we're definitely seeing a lot more emphasis now on impact-driven work. But yeah, we definitely need to follow that up and start thinking about how we can change the incentive systems as well. All right, our last question is, how do we make the project feasible within the organization, actually doing the selling with inside my university, which was RSM at the time, and how did you do that with inside WBCSD? I think on my side, it was a bit of a challenge, you know, definitely people didn't understand why I needed to go away for a year. So ethnography is already a bit of a strange research method, you know, coming from mostly a quantitative university that's doing mostly quantitative work. So they didn't really understand what is an ethnography. They didn't understand why I needed to be away for a year. So that really took a lot of pushing. I think, again, here, my supervisor, Gail, was super helpful, just because she believes in you know, well, qualitative research as one, but also in doing this sort of more impact-driven work, working with practitioners. So definitely having her support and helping her pushing on the inside was super helpful. Yeah, but I'll turn it over to Rodney now. How did you have to sell it on WBCSD? Were there some challenges inside? And
well, not really. I mean, for me, it wasn't that big a sell, because you were a resource that was coming into us that we didn't have to actually fund, because the funding was already in place. So we, that was, first of all, if that had been if you had been coming to WBCSD requiring remuneration, then perhaps there would have been more steps to go through. So the issue of funding was removed. Secondly, there are a number of people in WBCSD that have PhDs already. And, you know, most of if not all of the WBCSD staff have done at least a master's degree and quite a few have a PhD. So in some respects, these are people who have left academia and moved into the applied space. And so there was also a support there because these researchers were saying, well, isn't this a great method? Isn't this a great model? I wish I had had that when I was there. And then, thirdly, I mean, not only were you able to come in, you weren't just coming in as an academic in a white coat observing what we were doing from a distance as a social scientist. You were actually doing work. So, I mean, what's not to love about that? I have an extra resource that can work on, at the time, a really insignificant project. And at the same time, you were able to feel as if you were being part of a project that was going to be launched during the General Assembly of the United Nations. So this was, I hoped, going to not only be an opportunity for you to be able to observe and research and gather data and qualitative insights into your particular research topic, but you were also starting to apply those lessons learned and those skills to a real life project that resulted in a significant publication and a website that to this day is still being used. So I think there was a win-win-win-win-win-win outcome. And, I find it's really also a little bit disappointing that it took a long time for the host university to see the benefit of this.
Oop. I think you're frozen, hopefully.
If you are, did I freeze there? Sorry.
Yeah, you were frozen.
I'll go back. So I was just saying that I think it's a little bit of a challenge when, you had to sell this in such a way. I mean, I always think about business education and compare it to perhaps medical education. I mean, we go through 3 years or 2 years of an MBA afterwards, where access to the patient, if you like, is limited. Whereas you start on day one in the medical school with actually learning the craft of being a doctor. And I think the same thing goes when it applies to research. If you're doing medical research that will involve patient care, you need to be with the patients. You need to see their reaction. And so, because I passionately believe that research needs to drive change in business, it needs to drive change in leaders, it needs to drive change because the world needs the change. We know that the biodiversity losses that we're experiencing, the inequality that we're experiencing, and the climate emergency requires a different set of skills for leaders to manage this complexity that they're facing. They're not going to read academic publications. They will potentially access publications that come to them that are accessible. And so for me, this whole initiative, your PhD journey, was one that I passionately believed in and found it very easily to sell to my colleagues and to our members as well, because they thought, it's novel, it's driving change, and it's seeking to add not only to your journey, but to ours. And so, as I said, win, 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 win.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you made about being the difference between being a participant observer and actually like working on your team. I definitely felt it was beneficial for me to be a part of the team, and to really build those relationships, as opposed to just sitting there and watching you. That would have felt really awkward. So
that would have been weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think I might have said that was the last question, but I lied. There's one more question. What did you learn from the project that you found useful in your work, and what were the kind of key learning lessons? I think for me, as we've kind of already alluded to, this has been super influential for my career. I kind of had ingrained in me that impact work is important, and I'm still continuing to build off that today, through publications or through other things that I'm doing, and also just being a part of those projects at WBCSD then impact my research. It kind of shaped and changed the focus of my research. And I also really learned about the importance of being flexible as well, and just being patient, because there are definitely times where it wasn't easy, but you just have to be patient a little bit and keep trying to push forward and working things out. What were your key learning lessons? Any final reflections?
Well, the very fact that you're saying it has changed and influence the way in which you will research in the future for us is music to our ears, because that was exactly what we hoped it would do. I've already covered the importance in my view of action research, of applied research, you know, the fact that we've been able to influence that in some degree is really important. From a personal point of view, it was a pleasure working with you, and I know that you became a very integral and important member of our team. That I think during your tenure, you at WBCSD, you also felt like you were part of that community, we've stayed in touch since and are about to publish something for the first time. So, you know, that's those sorts of networks and relationships are exceptionally important. And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
for me, it wasn't just about having an extra pair of hands to do some work, and you know, you've got skills that we didn't even know you had that we put to play. So and that, as I said already, it's been a really win-win situation. I'm really frustrated that it's not happened again. So I'm hoping that that there are academics out there who are willing to change and are perhaps supervising PhD students today who might think this could be something that could be useful for other students if they are if you know they also value the importance of applied research. So you know, let there be more of Amanda Williamses in the world.
Oh, thanks, Rodney. Yeah, absolutely. I hope this serves as an example or sort of model that can be replicated in other places, and we start to grow this type of work. It was a really great experience. Yep.
That's all. Well, yeah. Thanks for including me in this conversation, and for everybody that's attending this conference virtually. I hope you all stay safe and sane.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Rodney.